The wind rolled across the dry American plains like it had a story to tell, but no one left alive to hear it. Dust moved in slow spirals around the empty railroad tracks, and the last light of evening burned red against the wide western sky. In a land ruled by survival and silence, a woman stood alone at the edge of a forgotten town. She had no husband, no name that anyone respected, and no place to go. In the Old West, that was worse than being dead. People in town used to whisper when she passed. They called her stray, called her cursed, called her trouble. But none of them ever asked how she ended up that way. They never cared how a woman could lose everything in one winter. The fire that took her home, the sickness that took her mother. The man who promised protection but rode away when the money ran dry. In the harsh American frontier, loyalty was thinner than water and colder than steel. She walked with her chin high even when her boots were splitting at the seams. Her dress was faded and patched, but she carried herself like a queen without a throne. There was something fierce in her dark eyes, something that refused to break. The western town of Rattlesnake Ridge had no mercy for women without men. A woman alone was seen as a burden or a bargain. She was neither. She was fire buried under ash. The saloon doors swung open as she stepped inside that evening, the piano stopping mid-note. Conversations dropped. Cowboys stared over their glasses of cheap whiskey. The sheriff leaned back in his chair and watched her like she was a storm cloud forming over dry land. She did not look at any of them. She only wanted work, maybe a plate of food. But work was given to wives and widows with connections. She was neither. She was invisible and visible all at once. When she stepped back out into the cooling desert air, humiliation followed her like a shadow. The sky stretched wide above her, painted in gold and purple. Somewhere in the distance, a lone hawk cried out. She felt the weight of the world pressing on her shoulders. No husband meant no protection. No name meant no history. No place to go meant the wilderness was her only companion. That was when the sound came. Hoofbeats, steady and strong, cutting through the quiet like a drum. Not the hurried gallop of a reckless cowboy. Not the lazy trot of a ranch hand. This was controlled, powerful, certain. She turned slowly, her heart pounding against her ribs. Out of the deepening dusk emerged a figure on horseback. Tall in the saddle, broad in the shoulders. Wrapped in shadow and strength, the horse moved as if it respected him, and the land itself seemed to part around his presence. He was Apache, a warrior from a tribe that the townsfolk feared and misunderstood. In their stories, Apache warriors were ghosts of the desert, fierce and untamed, but the truth was more complex than fear. His name was Thunderhawk. It carried weight like the mountains and moved like the wind. His long dark hair was tied back, his eyes sharp as a blade forged in fire. He did not wear the polished boots of a ranch owner or the shiny badge of a lawman. He wore the land itself, leather worn by travel, beads carved by tradition, strength earned by survival. She had seen Apache riders from a distance before, moving along the ridges like shadows at sunrise. But never this close, never looking directly at her. The town had gone still, windows closed quietly. The saloon doors creaked shut. Fear in the Old West spread faster than wildfire, especially when it came to native tribes defending their land. But Thunderhawk did not look at the town. He looked at her. She should have felt fear. That is what the world had taught her. Fear of men, fear of strangers, fear of warriors with unreadable eyes. But what she felt instead was something stranger. Recognition, as if he saw her not as a stray or a burden, but as something unbroken. He guided his horse closer, stopping only a few feet away. Dust swirled around them. The sunset caught the sharp line of his jaw and the steady calm in his face. He did not speak at first. He simply studied her, as if measuring her spirit rather than her weakness. "You do not belong here," he said finally, his voice deep and steady like distant thunder over desert hills. She almost laughed at that. Belonging was a luxury she had lost long ago. "I don't belong anywhere," she answered, her voice rough but proud. Something shifted in his expression. Not pity, Not judgment, something like decision. Behind her, the sheriff stepped out onto the wooden porch, hand resting near his gun. She's town business, the sheriff called out, trying to sound brave. Thunderhawk did not even turn his head. She is not property, he replied calmly. The air felt charged, like lightning about to strike. The American frontier had always been a place of power struggles, land, identity, survival. And now, in the middle of a dying town, a woman with no husband and no name stood between two worlds. She did not ask for help. She had stopped asking a long time ago. Every time she trusted someone, she paid for it. Every time she hoped, she lost more than she could afford. But standing in front of this Apache warrior, she felt the faintest crack in the wall she had built around her heart. He leaned down slightly from his saddle. Come, he said, not as an order, not as a plea, as certainty. She hesitated. The town behind her offered nothing but slow destruction. The desert ahead promised danger, uncertainty, whispers of a life she did not understand. Going with him meant leaving behind the last thread connecting her to what little she had known. The sheriff's voice rose again, filled with warning. You ride off with him. Don't come crawling back, as if she had ever crawled. She lifted her chin, meeting Thunderhawk's gaze. In his eyes she saw strength, but also something else, loneliness, the same kind that had followed her across every mile of dust and heartbreak. To outsiders standing in the same fading light, without asking permission from the town, from fate, or from fear itself, Thunderhawk reached down and took her hand. His grip was firm but not cruel, steady, warm against the cooling air. The world seemed to pause. Gasps came from behind closed curtains. The sheriff stepped forward, anger flashing. The sky darkened as the last light dipped below the horizon. The Old West held its breath. She had no husband, no name that mattered, no place to go. But as Thunderhawk pulled her up behind him onto the horse, wrapping one strong arm around her to steady her, she felt something she had not felt in years. Choice. The horse turned toward the open land, toward the Apache territory beyond the ridges where stories were born and legends were tested. The town shrank behind them, swallowed by shadow, yet as they rode into the night, she could not silence the questions burning inside her. Why her? What did he see? What did he want? And what price would she pay for following a warrior into a world that might never fully accept her? The desert wind rose again, stronger now, carrying secrets across the plains. Somewhere ahead lay a camp of warriors, traditions older than the railroad tracks, and a destiny neither of them had planned. And somewhere behind them, anger was already beginning to grow. She did not know it yet, but by the time the sun rose over the red cliffs, the line between captive and chosen, between survival and love, would begin to blur in ways she could never imagine, and the land itself would decide whether she had finally found a place to belong, or if she had just stepped into a storm that would change the American frontier forever. The night wrapped around them like a heavy blanket as Thunderhawk guided the horse deeper into the open desert. The town lights of Rattlesnake Ridge faded behind them until they were nothing more than weak sparks swallowed by darkness. The only sound was the steady rhythm of hooves against dry earth and the whisper of wind moving through tall desert grass. She sat stiff at first, unsure where to place her hands, unsure of the man whose arm circled her waist to keep her from falling. His grip was firm, but respectful. He did not pull her close for comfort, yet he did not allow distance either. It felt protective, not possessive. That confused her more than anything. My name is not what they call me, she said suddenly, her voice barely rising above the wind. Thunderhawk did not slow the horse. Then tell me your true name. She hesitated. Names carried history. Names carried pain. They once called me Iron Willow. He nodded once, as if accepting a sacred truth. Iron Willow does not break in a storm. And Thunderhawk, she asked quietly, is that a name given or earned? It was given at birth, he answered. It was earned in battle. There was no pride in his tone, only fact. They rode in silence for a while longer, but her mind would not rest. Every mile carried her farther from the world she knew. The American frontier was already unforgiving, but crossing into Apache territory meant stepping into stories the townsfolk had twisted with fear. She had heard words like savage and outlaw spoken in the saloon, but the man riding beneath her did not feel like a villain. He felt like something else entirely: controlled strength, quiet fire. In the distance, faint shapes began to rise against the starlit sky. Red cliffs, tall and ancient, standing guard over hidden valleys. A thin column of smoke curled upward from somewhere beyond the rocks. Life, a camp. "You are not afraid?" Thunderhawk said after a while. "I am," she answered honestly. "But I am more afraid of staying where I was." That seemed to satisfy him. As they approached the edge of the Apache camp, figures emerged from the shadows. Warriors stepped forward, bows slung across their backs, rifles resting in steady hands. They did not shout, they did not rush, they simply watched. Their presence carried discipline and unity, something she had never seen in Rattlesnake Ridge. One man stepped closer than the others. He was older, his hair streaked with silver, his posture unbent by time, his eyes were sharp and knowing. This was Red Mesa, a respected elder and strategist whose word carried weight among the people. Thunderhawk dismounted first, then reached up to help Iron Willow down. For a moment, her feet felt unsteady on the ground. Not from fear, but from the shift in reality. She was truly here. Red Mesa's gaze moved from Thunderhawk to her and back again. "You bring a storm with you," he said calmly. Thunderhawk met his stare. The storm was already coming. Iron Willow felt heat rise in her chest. She was being spoken about, not to? Yet she understood that she had stepped into a culture where trust was earned slowly, especially with an outsider. She straightened her shoulders. "I did not ask to be brought," she said firmly. "But I walked into the saddle by choice." A murmur passed quietly among the warriors. Red Mesa studied her for a long moment, then gave a slight nod. "Choice matters." She was led toward the center of camp where fires burned low and steady. Women with strong posture and watchful eyes paused in their tasks to look at her. Children peered from behind woven blankets. No one smiled. No one welcomed her with open arms. But neither did they show cruelty. They showed caution. Thunderhawk walked beside her but did not speak. His silence felt intentional, as if he wanted her to stand on her own strength. A woman stepped forward from one of the larger tents. She carried herself with quiet authority. Her name was Storm Dancer, known for her wisdom and fierce loyalty to her people. Her long braids were decorated with small beads that caught the firelight. "You will stay near my tent tonight," Storm Dancer said to Iron Willow. "You will not wander." Iron Willow nodded. "I do not plan to run." "That remains to be seen," Storm Dancer replied, though there was no insult in her tone. As the night deepened, Iron Willow sat near the fire wrapped in a woven blanket someone had handed her. She watched the rhythm of the camp. The way food was shared, the way elders were listened to, the way warriors checked the perimeter without being asked. This was not chaos. This was order built from survival. Across the fire, Thunderhawk spoke quietly with Red Mesa. Their voices were low, but she could feel tension in the air. Words like cavalry and boundary and treaty drifted toward her ears. Something was shifting beyond personal choices. The land itself was restless. She realized then that Thunderhawk had not taken her on impulse alone. There was purpose behind his decision, a reason that stretched beyond one woman with no place to go. Later, when the camp grew quieter and most had retreated to their tents, Thunderhawk approached her. The firelight softened the sharp lines of his face. "You should rest," he said. "You brought me here for more than shelter," she replied. He did not deny it. "The town is changing. More soldiers are coming. They push closer to our land each month. Rattlesnake Ridge is not as small as it pretends to be. It is becoming a doorway, and I am part of that doorway." She asked, "You have lived among them. You know their fears, their habits, their weaknesses." Understanding settled heavily over her. "You think I can help you. I know you can," he corrected gently. She studied him in the flickering light. So, I am not a captive. No, not a charity case. No, then what am I? His eyes held hers, steady and unguarded. A bridge. The word struck deeper than she expected. A bridge between two worlds that barely tolerated each other. A bridge between settlers and Apache warriors, between fear and understanding. It was more responsibility than she had ever carried. And if I refuse? She asked quietly. Then at sunrise I will take you, wherever you choose to go. He meant it. She could hear the truth in his voice, that made the choice heavier, not lighter. In the distance, a coyote howled. The sound echoed against the cliffs, wild and lonely. Iron Willow felt the weight of destiny pressing closer. For the first time in years, she was not invisible, she was needed. But being needed in a land divided by conflict came with danger. As she lay down inside Storm Dancer's tent later that night, sleep did not come easily. She stared up at the woven patterns above her, listening to the quiet movements of the camp. She thought of the sheriff's warning. She thought of the anger that would spread through Rattlesnake Ridge by morning. Men like Sheriff Iron Creed did not like losing control. Beyond the cliffs, cavalry forces were rumored to be scouting new routes. Settlers wanted more land, ranchers wanted more water, and the Apache tribe wanted what had always been theirs. Somewhere in that growing storm stood Thunderhawk, carrying both leadership and burden. And now, whether she fully understood it or not, she stood beside him. Before her eyes finally closed, she felt a strange mix of fear and warmth. Thunderhawk had taken her without asking. Yet he had given her something no one else ever had, a place to stand. Outside, Thunderhawk remained awake near the dying fire, staring toward the dark horizon where trouble was already gathering. He knew bringing Iron Willow into the heart of his people would cause whispers. He knew Red Mesa's warning was not just about her. A storm was coming to the American frontier, and by sunrise, choices would begin to shape battles that neither love nor loyalty alone could easily survive. Sunrise over the red cliffs did not bring peace. It brought clarity. The desert stretched wide and honest beneath the growing light, revealing every shadow that night had tried to hide. Iron Willow stepped out of Storm Dancer's tent and felt dozens of eyes on her again. The Apache camp was already awake. Fires were being fed. Horses were checked. Warriors moved with quiet purpose. This was not a place that wasted daylight. Thunderhawk stood at the edge of camp speaking with Red Mesa and a younger warrior named Black Arrow, whose temper was known to burn hotter than the desert sun. Black Arrow's jaw was tight as he glanced toward Iron Willow. She is from the town, Black Arrow said, not bothering to lower his voice. The same town that trades our land for railroad coin. Iron Willow heard him. She did not look away. Thunderhawk remained calm. She is not the town. Black Arrow stepped closer. But the town will follow her scent like wolves. Sheriff Iron Creed will not forget this. The name settled heavy in the air. Iron Creed was not a man who accepted humiliation quietly. He had built his authority in Rattlesnake Ridge on fear and force. Losing control of a situation meant losing face, and losing face meant retaliation. Red Mesa raised his hand slightly, silencing further argument. The cavalry scouts were seen near Dry Canyon yesterday, he said. This is no longer about one woman. The frontier is tightening around us. Iron Willow felt the truth of that. She had overheard talk in the saloon for months. Railroad investors pushing west, ranchers fencing off water sources, army officers promising protection while mapping Apache territory. The Old West was changing fast, and not in ways that respected those who were already rooted in it. Thunderhawk finally turned toward her. In the daylight, his presence felt even stronger. The night had softened him, the sun sharpened him. You said you have nothing tying you to Rattlesnake Ridge, he said quietly. I have memories, she answered, and not many of those are kind. Then speak freely, Red Mesa urged. What do they plan? She swallowed. Every word she shared could shape what came next. There was a meeting last week. Sheriff Iron Creed, a railroad man called Victor Stonewall, and a captain from the cavalry named Grant Valor. They spoke of expanding trade routes through Apache land. They believe your people are scattered, weak. Black Arrow's hands clenched, weak. They underestimate you, she continued, but they are not blind. They are gathering men, supplies. They plan to push slowly at first, offer false treaties, then fences, then soldiers. Silence followed her words. The wind shifted, lifting dust across the camp like a warning. Thunderhawk's gaze held hers, searching for any sign of deception. Why tell us this? She met his stare without hesitation. Because I have seen what happens when men like Iron Creed feel powerful. They do not stop. Not for anyone. Across the camp, Storm Dancer watched the exchange closely. She approached Iron Willow once the council broke apart. You speak boldly, Storm Dancer said. That earns respect. But respect does not erase doubt. I don't expect it to. Iron Willow replied. Storm Dancer studied her face. Thunderhawk carries heavy responsibility. He is being prepared to lead beyond war, to guide through change. Some believe you will distract him. The words stung more than Iron Willow expected. I did not come here to weaken him. Love can weaken or strengthen, Storm Dancer said simply. The difference lies in timing. Love. The word lingered between them like smoke. Iron Willow had not allowed herself to name what she felt. It was too early, too dangerous. Yet every time Thunderhawk looked at her as if she mattered, something inside her softened. Later that morning, Thunderhawk walked with her along a ridge overlooking the valley. Below them, Apache children practiced with small bows under the watchful eye of an elder. Life continued, even under threat. You are unsettled, he said. I am many things, she answered. He stopped walking. If this becomes too much, you can leave before it grows worse, and go where? She asked. Back to a town that sees me as nothing. Or wander the frontier alone. He did not respond immediately. The truth was plain between them. She belonged nowhere except perhaps here, and even that belonging was fragile. I did not bring you to use you, he said finally. I brought you because I saw strength, and because I am tired of watching the frontier divide itself without anyone trying to stand between. Her heart tightened. You think I can stand between soldiers and warriors? I think you can stand beside me. The simplicity of his words carried weight. No promises, no grand speeches, just partnership. Below the ridge, Black Arrow mounted his horse and rode out with to other warriors, scouts, watching the edges of their land, watching for dust clouds that signaled cavalry movement. Far to the east, in Rattlesnake Ridge, Sheriff Iron Creed paced the wooden floor of his office. Victor Stonewall sat across from him, polished boots resting on the desk as if the town already belonged to him. She rode off with an Apache, Iron Creed muttered. In front of my men, Victor Stonewall gave a thin smile. Then perhaps she can lead us straight to their camp. Iron Creed's eyes narrowed. You want a war, I want a railroad, Stonewall replied smoothly. And rails do not bend around sentiment. Captain Grant Valor stood near the window, silent but calculating. He understood politics better than either of them. Open war would attract attention from Washington. Slow pressure would not. If we move too quickly, we create martyrs, Grant Valor said. If we move carefully, we create compliance. Iron Creed leaned back, anger simmering. And what about her? Victor Stonewall shrugged. A woman without a husband is leverage, nothing more. Back in the Apache camp, Iron Willow felt a chill without knowing why. As if someone had spoken her fate aloud miles away. That evening, tension thickened when Black Arrow returned with news. Cavalry scouts near the river bend, he reported. Not many, but mapping. Red Mace's face hardened. They measure before they take. Thunderhawk's jaw tightened. We do not strike first. Black Arrow looked unconvinced. And if they strike, then we defend. Thunderhawk answered. Iron Willow stepped forward before she could stop herself. Iron Creed will not attack directly at first. He will send a message, something small. Something meant to test your reaction. All eyes turned to her again. What kind of message? Storm Dancer asked. Iron Willow's mind raced. Livestock stolen and blamed on you. A trader robbed on the road. Something that turns settlers angry. Black Arrow gave a bitter laugh. They already blame us for the wind? Yes, she said softly. But this time it will be organized. Thunderhawk looked toward the horizon where the sun was setting once more, gold fading into blood-red streaks across the sky. The American frontier held its breath again. You see their strategy clearly, he said to her. I survived by watching carefully, she replied. As night settled, Thunderhawk and Iron Willow stood near the fire once more. The closeness between them had grown. Though neither spoke of it openly, the air carried both warmth and danger. If they use you as leverage, he said quietly, I will not hand you over. And if protecting me risks your people, she asked. He did not answer right away. The firelight reflected in his eyes, revealing conflict he rarely showed. In the distance, a faint echo of a gunshot cracked through the night air, not close, but not far enough to ignore. Every warrior in camp froze. Black Arrow reached for his rifle. Thunderhawk stepped forward. Senses sharpened. Iron Willow felt her pulse race. The storm was no longer gathering. It was beginning, and somewhere beyond the dark ridges, men like Iron Creed were already moving pieces on a board neither side could afford to lose. The echo of the gunshot rolled across the desert like distant thunder, then faded into a silence so heavy it felt alive. Every warrior in the Apache camp stood still, listening for a second shot. None came. The horses shifted nervously, sensing the change in the air. Iron Willow felt her heart pounding against her ribs as if it wanted to outrun what was coming. Black Arrow was already moving. It came from the river bend, he said sharply, where the cavalry scouts were seen. Thunderhawk lifted his hand, steady and controlled. We do not rush blind into darkness. Red Mesa stepped forward, his voice calm but urgent. Send to riders, quiet, no firelight. Black Arrow and another warrior, Silent Ridge, mounted their horses within seconds and rode into the night without another word. The camp remained alert, but disciplined. Mothers drew children closer. Elders stood tall. No one panicked. This was not the first time tension had brushed against their land. Iron Willow stood near Thunderhawk, close enough to feel the warmth of him, yet unsure if she had the right to touch his arm. This is the message I warned you about, she whispered. Thunderhawk's jaw tightened. Perhaps. You think it is something else. I think Iron Creed prefers witnesses when he makes noise. That chilled her. If the sheriff wanted attention, this gunshot might only be the beginning. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The desert night grew colder. Finally, the sound of returning hooves reached them. Black Arrow dismounted quickly, his expression dark. A trader's wagon near the bend, he reported. One wheel shattered, goods scattered, no bodies. But signs of struggle. Red Mesa frowned. Whose wagon? Black Arrow looked at Iron Willow. Belonged to Victor Stonewall. A low murmur moved through the camp. Iron Willow's stomach tightened. Stonewall would never travel alone at night. He did not. Silent Ridge added. We found boot prints, many, too many for scouts. Thunderhawk understood immediately. Staged. Iron Willow nodded slowly. If Stonewall claims Apache warriors attacked his wagon, the settlers will demand protection. The cavalry will have reason to move closer. Black Arrow's eyes flashed. Then we should strike first and show them we are not weak, and give them the war they want. Thunderhawk replied evenly. Tension sparked between them like flint against steel. The American frontier was built on reaction. Whoever moved first shaped the story. As the camp debated quietly, Iron Willow stepped aside, her thoughts racing. She could almost hear Iron Creed's voice, calm and calculating. He would stand in the middle of town by morning, speaking of savage attacks, of innocent traders robbed. He would point toward the red cliffs and call for action. Thunderhawk approached her after the council broke apart. The firelight danced across his face, revealing both strength and strain. You know their minds better than we do, he said. If you were Iron Creed, what would you do next? She took a slow breath. He will ride out here with Captain Grant Valor, not to attack. To demand surrender of the ones responsible, he will expect you to refuse. That refusal becomes his excuse, and if I agree, Thunderhawk asked quietly, you would be admitting guilt, she answered, and giving him power. The weight of leadership pressed visibly against him. She saw it now, clearer than before. Thunderhawk was not just a warrior. He was balancing tradition, pride, and survival. One wrong decision could cost his people everything. Storm Dancer joined them, her gaze steady. There is another possibility, she said. The traitor may not be as loyal to Iron Creed as he appears. Iron Willow blinked. Stonewall, Storm Dancer nodded slightly. Men who chase railroad money often chase profit above loyalty. If his wagon was truly staged, perhaps he gains from both sides. Thunderhawk considered this. Divide them. Red Mesa approached, overhearing the last words. A divided enemy is weaker. Iron Willow's mind worked quickly. If we can prove the attack was staged, expose it before the settlers believe the lie, Iron Creed loses control of the narrative. Black Arrow crossed his arms. And how do we prove it without walking into their town? Silence settled again. The risk was obvious. I can go, Iron Willow said. Thunderhawk turned sharply toward her. No, they will not suspect me, she continued. I lived there. I can listen, watch, find out who truly destroyed the wagon, and if they decide to keep you. Thunderhawk asked, his voice low. The question carried more than strategy. It carried fear, not for himself, for her. She stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. You told me I am a bridge. Bridges must stand in dangerous places. Storm Dancer studied them both carefully. If she goes, she does not go alone. Black Arrow shook his head. No warrior will be welcomed in Rattlesnake Ridge. Not a warrior, Storm Dancer replied. A shadow. Silent Ridge stepped forward without being called. I can move unseen. Thunderhawk looked torn between instinct and logic. Finally, he spoke. We wait until dawn. If Iron Creed rides here first, we face him openly. If he does not, we move carefully. The decision held, but unease remained. As the night deepened, Iron Willow found herself standing at the edge of camp, staring toward the faint glow that marked Rattlesnake Ridge in the far distance. Thunderhawk joined her silently. If this leads to battle, she said softly, promise me something. He looked at her, eyes reflecting starlight. What? Do not let pride choose for you. A faint, almost sad smile touched his lips. And you, I will not let fear choose for me. The space between them felt charged. He lifted his hand slowly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was gentle, almost hesitant. In that simple touch was everything unspoken: trust, attraction, the possibility of love in the middle of conflict. Before either could say more, a horn call echoed from the outer ridge. Not Apache, not cavalry regulation. Something in between. Black Arrow rushed past them. Riders approaching, white flag raised. Thunderhawk's expression hardened instantly. It begins. Within minutes, warriors formed a silent line at the edge of camp. Iron Willow stood just behind Thunderhawk, her heart pounding but her posture straight. Out of the growing gray of early dawn, 3 riders approached slowly. Sheriff Iron Creed rode in the center, posture confident, eyes scanning the camp with open challenge. To his right rode Captain Grant Valor, face unreadable. To his left, Victor Stonewall, hat tipped low, expression carefully concerned. They stopped several yards away. Iron Creed raised his voice. We come in peace, Black Arrow muttered under his breath, but Thunderhawk stepped forward alone. What do you want? Thunderhawk asked calmly. Iron Creed gestured broadly. A wagon was attacked last night. Belonging to Victor Stonewall, witnesses claim Apache riders were seen near the river bend. Iron Willow felt every eye flick toward her for a fraction of a second. Thunderhawk did not flinch. We do not steal from traders. Grant Valor studied the camp carefully. Then you will not mind allowing us to search for proof. A dangerous request. An invasion disguised as cooperation. Red Mesa's voice was firm. Your search would bring armed soldiers into our homes. Victor Stonewall leaned forward slightly in his saddle. Unless you have something to hide. The tension was sharp enough to cut. Iron Willow stepped forward before she could stop herself. Who were these witnesses? She called out. Iron Creed's eyes locked onto her. Surprise flickered, quickly replaced by calculation. You, he said slowly. You chose an interesting side. I choose truth, she replied steadily. Grand Valor looked between them, sensing deeper currents. Thunderhawk's presence at her side felt like a wall of strength, but this was more than pride now. It was about preventing the frontier from tipping into open war. Iron Creed's lips curved slightly. Then perhaps you can help us all return to town. Give your statement. The offer hung in the morning air, thick with meaning. If she rode back with them, she stepped directly into their hands. If she refused, they would paint her as proof of guilt. Thunderhawk's hand brushed lightly against hers, unseen by most. A silent question, a silent promise. The sun crested the red cliffs, spilling light over both sides. Apache warriors, settlers, lawmen, railroad men. A divided American frontier standing on the edge of eruption, and Iron Willow realized that whatever choice she made in the next breath would decide not only her future with Thunderhawk, but whether love and survival could stand against greed and fear. The moment stretched, fragile and fierce, as every heart waited for her answer. The desert held its breath as Iron Willow stepped fully into the open space between both sides. The rising sun painted the red cliffs in gold, as if the land itself was watching to see which way history would turn. She felt Thunderhawk's silent strength behind her, steady and unshaken, but this choice was hers alone. I will return to town, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the quiet valley. A ripple of tension moved through the Apache line. Black Arrow's jaw tightened, and Storm Dancer's eyes searched her face. Thunderhawk did not move, yet she felt the storm inside him. But I will not return as your prisoner, she continued, her gaze fixed on Sheriff Iron Creed. I will return as witness to the truth. And I expect Captain Grand Valor to guarantee my safe passage both ways. Grand Valor studied her carefully. He was a soldier, but not a fool. You have my word, he said after a moment. You will not be detained. Iron Creed's smile did not reach his eyes. Very well. Let the lady speak for justice. Thunderhawk stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. If you do not return by nightfall, I will come for you. She met his gaze. I will return. There was no dramatic embrace, no public declaration. Just a look filled with trust that had been built in the middle of conflict. Then she mounted one of the spare horses provided by Grand Valor and rode toward Rattlesnake Ridge, beside the three men who had tried to control her fate. The ride back felt longer than before. The American frontier stretched wide, dust swirling in the morning air. Victor Stonewall rode quietly, but she could feel his eyes on her. He was calculating, always calculating. You are brave, he said smoothly at one point. I am practical, she replied. Sheriff Iron Creed rode ahead, silent and rigid. Losing control of the narrative had unsettled him more than he would admit. When they reached Rattlesnake Ridge, townsfolk gathered quickly. Word had already spread about the so-called Apache attack. Fear traveled fast in small towns built on rumor. Iron Willow saw familiar faces, people who had ignored her before. Now they stared as if she carried a secret. In front of the saloon, Iron Creed addressed the crowd. This woman claims to know the truth about last night's crime. All eyes turned to her. Iron Willow stepped forward, steady despite the weight pressing against her chest. The wagon was broken near the river bend, she began. But there were no bodies, no stolen horses, no signs of Apache weapons. Murmurs spread. I have seen Apache riders. They move clean, precise. This wagon was smashed carelessly. The wheel shattered from the inside, not from outside force. Victor Stonewall's expression tightened slightly. And the boot prints, she continued, to many, all the same size. All from town-made boots. A rancher in the crowd frowned. You saying it was staged? I am saying someone wanted it to look like an Apache attack, she replied clearly. Captain Grant Valor watched the reactions carefully. Doubt had begun to spread. Doubt was powerful. Iron Creed stepped forward. You have no proof. Iron Willow met his stare. Search the blacksmith's yard. You will find spare wagon parts delivered yesterday afternoon. Ordered under Victor Stonewall's name. The crowd shifted again, eyes turning towards Stonewall. Victor Stonewall laughed lightly, though his jaw was tight. Business requires preparation. Then explain why your hired men were seen drinking in the saloon, boasting about easy pay for night work, she pressed. A few men in the back exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, a stable hand named Granite Cole, suddenly looked pale. Grant Valor's voice cut through the noise. Sheriff, I suggest we verify these claims before escalating tensions with the Apache tribe. Iron Creed realized the ground beneath him was shifting. If he pushed hard and the accusation proved false, his authority would weaken. If he backed down, he appeared cautious rather than defeated. Victor Stonewall saw the danger as well. Railroad investors valued stability, not reckless conflict. Within an hour, Grant Valor ordered a quiet inspection. The spare wagon parts were found. Granite Cole admitted under pressure that he had been paid to help break the wheel near the river bend. The story began to unravel. The crowd's anger shifted direction. Not toward the Apache tribe, but toward manipulation. Iron Creed stood stiff, his plan dissolving under daylight. By late afternoon, Captain Grant Valor addressed both town and tribal representatives who had cautiously approached the outskirts. There will be no immediate military action, he declared. Until further evidence arises, we will not accuse the Apache of this crime. It was not a grand victory, but it was enough. Enough to prevent bloodshed, enough to pause the advance. Iron Willow rode back toward the Red Cliffs before sunset, her heart racing with hope and exhaustion. When the Apache camp came into view, Thunderhawk was already waiting at the ridge. She barely dismounted before he reached her. His hands rested on her shoulders, searching her face for signs of harm. It is done, she said softly. For now, he echoed. Behind him, Red Mesa and Storm Dancer approached. Black Arrow's expression was no longer guarded but thoughtful. You stood between worlds and did not fall, Red Mesa said. Storm Dancer gave a faint smile. A bridge, indeed. Iron Willow felt something settle inside her that had been restless for years. She had not returned as property, not as a burden. She had returned as strength. In the days that followed, tension did not disappear completely. The American frontier was still changing. The railroad would continue to push west. Settlers would still seek land. But a line of communication had opened. Captain Grant Valor agreed to formal talks rather than armed patrols. Even Iron Creed, wounded in pride, understood that open war would cost him more than it gained. Victor Stonewall left town weeks later, his railroad plans delayed and his reputation stained. Greed had been exposed by truth. As for Iron Willow, she found herself walking freely through the Apache camp, no longer watched with suspicion, but with quiet respect. Children ran past her without fear. Storm Dancer spoke to her as equal. Even Black Arrow nodded when she passed. One evening, under a sky filled with stars brighter than any town lantern, Thunderhawk stood beside her overlooking the valley. You could still leave, he said gently. Choose another path. She looked at the land that had once frightened her. The red cliffs glowing softly in moonlight. The fires below burning steady and warm. I am done running, she answered. He turned to her fully then, no longer just warrior or leader, but man. Then stay, not as a guest, not as a bridge. Stay as my partner. Her breath caught. This was not possession, not rescue. It was choice offered freely. I stay, she said. Thunderhawk drew her into his arms, strong and certain. The embrace was not rushed or desperate. It was grounded, like roots finally finding soil. Around them, the Apache camp carried on with quiet life. Laughter drifted from a nearby fire. The wind moved gently through the desert grass. Iron Willow had once believed she had no husband, no name, and no place to go. Yet on this white American frontier, among a people who valued courage and truth, she had found more than survival. She had found belonging. And as the stars stretched endless above the old western land, the storm that once threatened to divide them gave way to something stronger than fear: respect, unity, and a love powerful enough to stand against the changing frontier.